Right, declarations of interest is the next item. Just checking anybody's got any new declarations of interest. Like it, that's grand. The minutes of the last meeting, they have been circulated. I'm not going to go through those, just ask if anybody's got any comments they wish to make, any alterations or addendums, doesn't look like it. So can I check that we're all happy to approve those minutes? There we are. Good. There were two matters arising only relating to the Fit to Sit protocol and Sky Story, both of which have been dealt with. So again, just checking that no one's got any questions or issues to raise on that. Good. Okay, thank you very much. So we're swiftly moving on to item 5, which is the chair's report. Just got a couple of things to say. The board did meet in development session twice, once in October, looking at the duty of care and also looking at future planning. We also did the same thing yesterday, so that's good. The other thing I just wanted to mention, really for the benefit of people watching, is that just a reminder, really, that the purpose of this meeting in terms of governance is not necessarily to repeat all the work that have been done by our committees. So there are a number of quite important matters that we will be looking at today, but we will be relying very heavily on the fact that the committees like Financial Performance Committee, the Quest Quality Committee and so on, will be relying on the fact that they have done the deep dive necessary. And so we won't necessarily be looking to repeat that exercise. So the fact that we go through some of those very important issues quickly is not to be read as though they are unimportant. On the contrary, it is to just support the fact that we rely upon these subcommittees to do the deep dive on all of those. So on that point, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the Chief Executive's report. So over to James.
Thank you, Chairman. So as usual, the report is there for the board to see. I'll just highlight a couple of areas and then happy to take any questions at the end. In addition to the report, there's just 2 points that I'd like to call the board's attention to. The first is that since the paper was written, I'm pleased to be able to share with the board that our ECNS implementation team were successful in being a category winner at the Allied Health Awards held recently, I think last week actually, in Wales. So we're really pleased that the implementation team has been recognised. Fantastic work they've done. Of course, the board will be familiar with the fact that we are the first ambulance service in the UK to implement ECNS to paramedics in our clinical support desk. And the second area, just to call out in addition to the report, is that again, the board will have seen reported widely in the media that the inquiry into the Manchester Arena attack has now reported. There are a number of recommendations directly relevant to the ambulance sector. The EPRR team, lead directorate, are undertaking an assessment of that, what that means for us. That will be brought forward through the relevant government panel, and I was going to be here to board in due course, but it is right at this point to say that there will be resource implications for us as a result of the recommendations from that inquiry, some of which in all likelihood will be matters for commissioners to raise with commissioners in due course. But just to put that on the board's radar, that will follow through, there will be implications as a result of the recommendations there. Turning to the paper, if I could take us to just 2 paragraphs today, I just want to call out 58 first, if I can, please, which is on page 11, top of page 11, and this is about robots. So we have implemented or deployed a couple of robots now that are undertaking processes that can be robotically managed through automation, and there's further, I think, capacity, it's fair to say, in those bots that we could deploy in administrative processes as we go forward. So I'm pleased to see that finally come off and the deployment of those robots now live. And then the second area I just want to draw the board's attention to is paragraph 69 at the top of page 13, second paragraph at the top of page 13. And this is to report to the board that we now have a midwife inside the organisation for us as part of the recommendations from maternity reviews across Wales, but that post holder will be able to support us with the development of how we manage maternity cases and childbirth beyond the recommendations of that report. So I'm really pleased that we've got another different position adding to the breadth growing onto this team in the organisation. I'll stop there, Chairman, and have to take questions on the paper.
Good, thank you very much, Jason. So looking around, anybody remotely or in the room got any questions for Jason? Very comprehensive paper, as always, very detailed. Kevin's got his hand up. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, and apologies for not being with you. When you reach a venerable age and they give you a vaccination that knocks you over, it's difficult. Can I just, Jason, on Bethan, our midwife, I met with Bethan, I can't remember, a couple of weeks ago, and I got the impression she was on secondment. Is that the case, and is there a move to, have a permanent appointment?
Liam's probably best placed to pick that up if I can, Kevin.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the post is a secondment from the Health Board. It's a time-limited piece of work that's been funded by Welsh Government. The intent and the expectation is that we can build on that. So it's part of the wider Welsh approach to safe maternity, and from our end of the telescope, if we can achieve the outcomes we're looking for, then we want to particularly look at that in terms of some of the support we give to our clinicians and monitoring, on a remote advice side.
Yeah, a great addition to the portfolio. Thanks very much.
Okay, any other questions? Paper is to note, which as a board we usually do. And Paul?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to congratulate the team on the development of the community swap shop. We know how difficult the financial situation is for everyone, particularly our staff. So it's good to see that that's been established, and that we are including financial support discussions in the WASP Welcome Pack. So that's really good to see, and it's something that we talked about at People and Culture Committee. So it's good to see it being established now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? We can move on. We've duly noted it. So thanks, Jason, and a very comprehensive paper. So thank you. Next item is item 7, questions from the public. I've advised that we don't have any questions, still don't have any now. So there are no questions from the public to answer. And just a reminder to anybody in the public who wants to raise questions, there is an ability to do that electronically. And we welcome questions from the public. So we can deal with that matter and move on to item 8, which is a patient story. And I think, Liam, you're introducing Leo.
Yes, so we have a patient story today, which is shared with us by a lady called Julie Taylor. And this one is, it follows on from one we took at Quest, which was quite a powerful one in relation to a fraud that may come in the report later. But this report, I think this particular story is important because what it does is two things. It shows honestly that there are times when we don't get things right as an organisation, and it puts that it shares that. What it also does is also highlights that the pressures that we are under very rapidly exaggerate the challenge that creates. So in normal circumstances, if we had something that didn't quite go according to plan in a categorisation, we wouldn't expect there to be a significant delay that flows from that, which then exacerbates the patient's experience. And this story really shows that through. So it talks about what we can do to improve and how we have to ensure that we're on our game at every step. But it also shows that as part of a system, when something doesn't work from our end, actually it gets magnified very, very quickly with quite a poor consequence. So I think that Julie's daughter speaks very eloquently for herself, and I think this time I'm happy to speak on that.
Okay, thank you.
My father had had a very busy day after he got up from bed. He was well, he was a 78, but he was a fit man. And then my mother was ringing me at 12:25 to say that she'd gone up to bed at 11 because she was exhausted. And my dad had climbed the stairs and had just collapsed on the bed. I just shot down there and I got into the house and I shouted, "Where are you? We're up here, we're up here." So I went upstairs and I was just so shocked at the state of my father. I've been a qualified nurse for 33 years, working in the NHS, and I've never seen anything like it. He was grey, clammy, he was sweating profusely, it was dripping off him onto the wood floor. And I think being a nurse as well, I think my mother just wanted me to sort everything out, but I couldn't. So they'd already rang the ambulance, so I rang back down because I just automatically thought it was his heart. I thought, oh, he's definitely having a heart attack, because what else could come on him as quickly as this? I ran downstairs and I said, either my father's not breathing very well and he's vomiting and he's just in a dreadful state. So they said there was a delay in the ambulance. I just felt so desperate. I would have done anything for an ambulance because I was just so desperate for somebody to come and help us. And my father was, you know, he was struggling, and I think he must have been aware of the emotions in the room, because I just kept running in and out of the road, out on the drive down onto the road, because I just couldn't stay in the room with him because it was so painful to see him. And after a couple of hours, I rang the ambulance again, and they said that the ambulance can't come. So they said if it's safe to do so, to put him in the car and take him to hospital. I had his hand and I said, listen, I said, there's something awful wrong with you, but I don't know what it is. And I said, I'm really worried because you're getting worse, and I can see you getting worse and the ambulance isn't coming. So I said, I got to take you to hospital. I got to put you in the car. I had a huge decision to make because I thought he was having a heart attack and the ambulance hadn't come. And I was worried because I thought if he has a cardiac arrest on the way to the hospital, and I got to get him out of the car to resuscitate him, I just didn't know if I was making the right decision taking him. I got down to the Royal Glamorgan and I was screaming for somebody to help me, and I got him in a chair, and a lovely sister came out of A&E and she took him off me and I booked him in. And then we were told then that he had acute severe pancreatitis from a gallstone, and we didn't know he had gallstones. He'd had some indigestion, but he never complained of pain that you'd associate with gall pain, you know. So he was in A&E for 12 hours, transferred then out to a ward, but by 11 o'clock on the Saturday night he was on a ventilator and he had multi-organ failure and he died on the 19th. They just couldn't do anything for him, you know, because he had this massive overwhelming inflammation. They were wonderful in intensive care, and I know he died comfortable and he wasn't in pain. For me and my mother, we just keep going back to that terrible time in the house. You know, after the complaint I made and the report that came back to me, they said they apologised and said that, you know, my father's ambulance was coded as an amber and it should have been a red call, and you know, an ambulance could have been dispatched within a few minutes, and my father could have had an ambulance an hour and 47 minutes sooner, but he would have had some pain relief and we would have had some support, and he would have thought, I know he would have felt relieved that some help had come as well, because we were just left in a terrible mess. That pain he was in will haunt me till the day I die, and I think if we could have had an ambulance, you know, within that half hour, I think so much of that would have, you know, we wouldn't have this like traumatic stress that we're going through all the time, because we try not to relive it, but we seem to be going over it all the time. I know that if an ambulance had come to see to him, that wouldn't have saved his life. I'm completely aware of that. He would have still have passed away, but we knew that we would have done everything we could have done for him then. But instead, you know, did I wait too long in the house? Because I was waiting for nearly 3 hours, and that's like forever when you're in that state, you know. They couldn't have saved him, but they could have salvaged some of that awful time we had in the house. You know, I understand after working in the NHS how busy everywhere is, but you know, for me, I made the complaint because I wanted to know what had happened, and for him to say they were sorry, I was very grateful for the letter I had back. It was clear, it was honest, it was transparent, you know. But what's going to be done now for, you know, we can make changes for the better, so that, you know, those improvements are actually happening, and rather than just talked about, so that another family haven't got to suffer and other patients haven't got to suffer like my father did. I know I'd done everything that I could have done, but I think just being human and being a nurse, and you know, he was the centre of our world. He was just everything to us, you know, and the very time he needed us, I couldn't help him, and it's just sad.
Powerful video.
I think there's lots of work with the Peggy team working Julie, I think the thing for me in this particular story is we know that all categorization sometimes isn't perfect, but it can be perfect all the time. And so the initial categorization report was presented was should have come through as an amber, and then it should have been red. Even notwithstanding that we should have got that categorization right when the call happened, if we had our resources in the right place, then we would have responded in a 20-30 minute window, and we would have then been able to support the family to put the pay relief in and to ensure appropriate conveyance. And I think it's just a really powerful representation of sometimes when we talk about things like immediate release and doing the right thing by Reds, this is a really good example of the consequence when we can't get immediate release when we can't get our resources to people who are sitting in the ambers. It's more than just lifeless, and it's the pain it causes the family, it's the distress it causes the family. Most importantly, it's obviously what it means for the patient themselves and what we're able to do for them.
Yes, absolutely. Issues around handover delays will be raised a bit earlier, a bit later on in the agenda. Comments from questions around, I think we've got hands up over the remotely. So Jogger, good morning to you. Shall we go to Jogger first and then go to, I think it's Kevin, and then to the room?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Yeah, I would say thanks to Julie for sharing that story. It's never great when you hear these kind of stories, but I think it's very important that they are shared with us and the public. And the comment I really wanted to make is that, and we've addressed earlier about the steps we're taking, but it's important that we do the whole lessons learned from this, of understanding where the mistakes were made, how we can improve, because we always need to be striving to improve, and I know we do as an organisation. That's what we continuously want to be doing. The other comment I wanted to make, it was from Julie's response there, appreciating the follow-up when she raised the complaint. The words to use, it was clear and transparent communication, and I think in times like this is crucial as an organisation when those issues are there come about, that we need to be clear and transparent with patients and with members of the public. So I just want to say I was glad that the follow-up response we had after the tragic incident, at least that to some way helped Julie to kind of understand the position. So I just wanted to make that comment there, Chair. Thank you.
Shall we go? I'm not sure which is the order we came, so we'll go to Bethan next, shall we? And then to Bethan.
Thank you, Chair. Jog has made some of the comments that I wanted to, but I think as Chair of Quest, I wanted to make some comments because Liam, in his introduction, referred to the fact that in our last meeting of Quest, we received a patient story which was similar in some ways and highly impactful, as the stories always are. And I will make reference to that later in my highlight report from Quest meeting. When we listen to stories like this, they're really, really difficult to listen to and to hear, but I think it's absolutely crucial that we use these to spur us on, to try to continue to do all that we can to minimise the risk and the harm to everyone when we are unable to get to them in the community because of the pressures across the system. In Quest Committee, we don't just look at and talk about and consider patient harm, we also talk about patient experience. And that came across really strongly in this story. So whilst the outcome, unfortunately, might not have been any different for Julie's dad, the experience the whole family went through and the trauma that Julie and her mum continue to go through now, I'm sure is significant, having listened to Julie. And therefore, on that basis, it is absolutely crucial we continue to use all of our networks to continue to have conversations with our partners and continue to do all that we can to minimise the impact of the system-wide pressures on everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and I'm sure that you share those views. I think Kevin, was your hand up? No, Paul.
Hand's gone back down. Thanks very much. All the points are covered.
Okay, thank you very much. Jason.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of points to make. I mean, as Bethan and others have said, it's a difficult story to hear from Julie about her experience with her dad, and regrettably, we know as involved there are many others similar to this. I was pleased to hear Julie reference the investigation outcome letter and commenting on us being transparent and open about that. That's one of the things that we hold dear about being honest, open, where we get things wrong. when mistakes are made. And clearly, you know, in that letter to Julie, I have already apologised, but I will do so again now for the experience she had in the wait that she had for the ambulance to arrive. We'll cover later, as you said, Chairman, the challenges which are leading to those delays. The point I just wanted to make is around call categorisation. So whilst errors do occur, colleagues on the board will remember, of course, that we are an accredited centre of excellence for the use of the triage tool, which means one of a small number of organisations, I should make a point, that are an accredited centre of excellence, which means that our call handling staff are subject to routine, regular audits of compliance to the protocol, and to achieve that accredited centre of excellence status, we have to maintain very high levels of compliance with the audit tool. So that's not to say that errors don't occur, because they do, really. When they do, we can learn from those. We do seek to learn. But we do maintain very high compliance routinely with the audit tool because of that accredited centre of excellence. And Lee may want to say more on that, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, looking around the room, Lee, do you want to add anything?
No, Jason.
Okay,
No, absolutely right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you, man. I mean, thank you, Lee, for that. And I think it is a very powerful story. And I think what it does as well is it just highlights, we know these things are going on all the time. We know that delays in ambulances, and we will hear a lot more about that as this meeting progresses, what we plan to do about it. What I think it does highlight there very powerfully is that the impact can actually last not just during the course of the event and for a short time thereafter. And was it related in a tragic death, which in itself has longer term consequences. So that necessarily means this whole incident runs on and on. But actually, it's continuing to run on, and the family itself is continuing to revisit the trauma of that day, which could have been alleviated to a large extent had never been available. So it's a very powerful story on a number of levels. And it's very good that we see it, and we will thank, I know that Trish is going to write it down. We'll thank doing the videos. It's very brave of her to do that, and it's very powerful. So thank you very much to everybody, well, to Julie and everybody. All right, it's quite convenient and timely in a way that we move on to the next item, which sort of directly links to it, and that is item 9, which is the progress on actions to mitigate the avoidable harm. So, Jason, back to you, and it's your paper on this.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an update on previous papers the board has received on actions to mitigate the avoidable harm that arises particularly from emergency department handover delays. I'll just pull out a couple of key items from the paper, maybe invite Rachel to report the action plan if there are any questions on that afterwards. So since we've last met and discussed this matter, in October, emergency department handover delays were at their worst ever. Just shy of 30,000 hours of emergency fleet capacity were lost at emergency departments across Wales, accounting for 36% of the entire emergency fleet that month. And of course, we know underneath that 36% of the average, there are peaks much higher than that during certain times of the day and week where it can be in excess of 50% of the fleet unavailable to us delayed at emergency departments. Now, as well as the efficiency actions that we are taking internally to do all that we can to improve the experience for patients, such as the roster changes nationally, which we've got very good progress on, are out nearing completion this month. Reduction in overall attendance losses as a result of sickness, which is largely tracking the trajectory we set ourselves in the IMTP this year. Recruitment of 100 additional people, which are on track to be deployed in mid to late January, and other workplace efficiencies. We've got good progress with those. We've got good progress with improvements in the consultant close rate, where we're now seeing some days at 16%. So that gives us good confidence that we'll be able to hit that 15% stretch target we set ourselves by the end of the calendar year. So in addition to all those internal efficiencies, we are now starting to see some traction and specific emergency departments across Wales. And the paper in paragraph 8 in the covering paper, our progress we are starting to see at Cardiff Vale Cardiff Vale Hospital, where we have seen a good reduction in total losses and improvement with the agreed 4-hour backstop. Now, what I should say, of course, is that a 4-hour wait to hand over emergency department is far too long in any event, but it is progress compared to where we practically been recent months. So we've got some traction there. Good progress with the actions that are within our control to improve efficiency. We've got improving compliance with immediate release directions, particularly for red balls, but not so much in the amber category. There is variation across the departments, but there is a general improved compliance. And of course, we're sharing compliance data each week with health board colleagues in that connection. And then the final thing to say here, in addition to the action plan, which you can see underneath the paper, is that there is now going to be a meeting next week of chief executives, medical directors and directors of nursing to further push for improvements, and we'll be sharing best practice from 2 sites, one in Wales, one in England, for adoption across so that's a summary, Chairman, of where we are.
Good, thank you. And I would just add that this issue is now very much being viewed at the highest level. The Minister is under pressure of the Senate for questions. She's taking a very close personal interest in this summit that you mentioned, Jason, that's happening next week is a direct consequence of her calling that meeting and wanting to be very much involved in it. So this issue around handover days is receiving a huge amount of attention. The harm that it's doing is clearly recognized. It's not to say that there are complete solutions, but it is under the microscope, which I guess is step number 1. Shall we just look at our remote colleagues? Anybody got questions there? Yes, but 2 hands going up. So Bethan, shall we go to you first and then to Paul? Bethan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. There's staggering results and staggering data in this report. Jason, thank you for your report because it presents a very clear picture, although it's a very, very worrying picture. We've seen a difficult situation for months now, for many, many months. And when I'm looking at the data in terms of the forecast for the next few months, for the winter months, there's staggering numbers in there. We're saying 2,195 patients will come to severe harm over the next couple of months. We're also saying over 41,000 people will not receive a response from us because of the system pressures. Further, we're saying that we're envisaging 3,000 12-hour shifts per month will be lost to handover delays. And because we've been discussing these pressures for so long, Chair, I think there is a risk that the numbers just trip off our tongues. We'll almost become complacent, and that just can't happen because of the impact of these numbers and the challenges on individuals, both in the community through our inability to get to them, and also because of the handover delays where patients are sat on ambulances outside ED departments. And as you say, we've escalated these issues to the highest level and have done for many months. And it's good to hear that we're starting to see some improvements in one geographical area now. But almost 50% of immediate release directives have been refused, have been declined. So we're still seeing a huge impact despite continuing to have the dialogue we're having. I guess the one question for me is, is there anything that we or our partners can learn from the one geographical area where we have seen improvements? And are those discussions happening, as far as we're aware, between the one health board area that has shown some improvements?
Thank you, Beth. And I'll do a quick answer and then hand it to you, Jason. But I think the answer is yes. I think the reason why, one of the many reasons why we're having the meeting called by the Minister next week is for that very purpose of sharing best practice. I think we need to obviously be pleased to see improvements in Cardiff and Vale. We need to understand where those are coming from, and perhaps not leap to embrace it like the drowning man and a life raft, because there may be issues there which we will discover in fullness of time that may not be transferable. We'll find out. But you're right to raise it, and you're right also that we mustn't become complacent about this. And it is very easy to month after month read all these numbers, and when we see that video that we just watched, it brings home to us that every single one of those numbers has a very real impact. I suppose the other thing we do just need to be aware of course, is that we are not alone in the health sector in having these conversations. There is harm going on all over with people waiting for operations, elective care, cancer care being delayed, and all sorts of things everywhere. The whole health system is under pressure. The minister is, of course, trying to find ways of relieving all of those pressures simultaneously at a time with financial constraints and increasing demand. So it is a very real problem. But you are right to say that we mustn't become immune to it. Jason, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I mean, Bethan, we clearly are not letting ourselves get complacent with this, and that's one of the reasons actually why we're seeking to perhaps bring to life in a different way in this report this month. What we expect to happen over the next few months. Of course, those assumptions there are predicated on some modelling and scenarios underneath that operational modelling for the winter months, for the peak of winter. On the meeting next week, the summit, as Colin's described it, we were keen with the Emergency Ambulance Service Committee team to use it as a learning event, an opportunity for best practice to be shared. As a result of conversations we've had with that team, as Colin has indicated, we've got Cardiff and Vale will be presenting to the other health boards on the approach that they've taken to reducing improving compliance with immediate release directions to the point where every red immediate release direction has been accepted for the last couple of weeks at Cardiff, every single one of them, and also the kind of compliance with the 4-hour backstop commitment that's been given. We've also secured support from Walsall University, I think it's University, but Walsall Hospitals NHS Trust in England, where the approach that they've taken has delivered very good results in a challenge system like ours in terms of emergency handover. We saw that presentation at the Ambulance Leadership Forum conference earlier this year, and they've agreed, following our request, to come to the event next week to share their approach with health boards here in Wales too. So we're trying to take every opportunity we can, not only to signal to system colleagues and government colleagues what we expect to happen as a result of the current performance. And that's not just simply saying, well, this is going to happen, so we're sitting on our hands now. There are actions we're taking, as many as we can, to make things as good as we can. And the waterfall chart underneath that, in paragraph 10, seeks to demonstrate that, Bethan, in the paper. But we're also, trying to import where we can practice that is evidenced as working. Okay, thank you, Bethan. Shall we go to Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions, if I can. One is about the Fit to Sit protocol. What progress has been made on that? And the second one is about the COVID sickness management, which obviously affects our sickness records. So I was wondering if there's been any changes to that management process as well. Thank you.
Jason,
I think Liam is best placed, Chairman, to talk about Fit to Sit, and then Lee may want to comment on COVID absence.
So there's a lot of work going on in the emergency departments to create capacity. I would not sit here and say there's been significant progress on Fit to Sit per se in terms of creating the capacity. There is a meeting of EDNs on this Friday, and there's an agenda item which is actually to a number of issues, one of which would include Fit to Sit.
Lee, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think all your questions alluding to the management arrangements of COVID absences. So I mean, the numbers of COVID-related absences are down, as I think live is at some of the lowest levels that we've seen. So that's encouraging. But the answer to the question around the arrangements on its management, there is no change in Wales. And if I'm honest, I've got no prognosis of the likelihood of a change in Wales either.
Okay, we'll pick that up at the People and Culture Committee then, Lee. This is an important issue for us in terms of our achieving our sickness absence rate. But thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Nobody remotely? Yes, okay, Karen. And then Martin, yeah, Karen.
So a lot of the points that I wanted to make have already been made, but thank you for the report. I think the clarity and transparency, our approach on this is really helpful and really important. What also concerns me is the financial settlement, and that's going to be likely challenging next year, and how this is going to impact the next winter. But my question is around health board governance of this risk. So I support what you're saying, Chair. You know, there's a lot of risk across the health boards with regard to patient harm. Do we know if the health boards have oversight of the risk that we're talking about here? I think it's quite an important one.
It's a very good question. I mean, I think the answer that I would give off the top of my head is that I think they do, certainly as far as the chairs are concerned. And there's definitely no doubt that the minister is taking personal time out to address the chairs of all of the health trusts in Wales, including ourselves. I've met and Jason had a couple of meetings briefly with her and other chairs. She's taken personal control of that, and she's very much sees the chairs of the boards as being part of the solution. And she's very much holding them accountable for it. So I think that's right. Where we don't have the confidence necessarily is how much attention those chairs are actually taking, and indeed the chief execs are taking when they go back into their full boards. I'm fairly confident that if I was a chair of a health authority, I would be in no doubt what the minister's view is on these issues. But human condition being what it is, they are under pressure with all sorts of other directions as well. So whether they are taking it back and whether their colleagues around the board table like this, all across Wales are sitting at the same level, I don't have the confidence and can't say. I don't know, Jason, whether you've got a view.
I certainly can't comment on discussions in health boards and committees. What I can say is that a couple of things. So we have routinely share data, hand over data, the impact of that with each other. On a local, health basis, there's data we share. We have recently, not in weeks, but in the last few months or so, attended some of those committees and raised the issue. And then, of course, the peer groups, the professional peer groups. So, Lee will share with chief operating officers, Brendan with medical directors, Lee with directors of nursing, me with the chief execs, and so on. There is regular dialogue and sharing of information, both in terms of data, but impact on patients, importantly our people, with those professional groups. So I think it complements the approach that the minister's taking in terms of personal interest on the issue. We are certainly taking every possible opportunity we've got. We continue to do that, shine a light on the impacts on our organisation, our patients.
And if I could say, Chair, I'm completely reassured on that point, but thank you for reiterating that. I think it's important, but my understanding is the health boards have quality leads on their board. So, maybe that's the specific question that be helpful to answer. If those quality leads have oversight of this level of data.
I think I think one of the things gives me a little bit of comfort is, the old adage of what gets measured gets done. And the two measures which I really have a bright spotlight focus on at the moment is the instant release requests, where we are clearly seeing some improvement. Very public, it's very clear where that's happening, and it's being very much published on a trust by trust basis, so you can see very clearly which ones are different, which ones are. And similarly with handover, again, it's measured, it's recorded, and for good or for ill, of course, that is receiving attention in the Senate, and the health minister has been under some pressure with very aggressive questioning in very recent times on this. So this is a topic which at all levels very much keep focused. We've got a couple of the hands up. There's Martin here, and there's also I think Kevin possibly, but and okay. Shall we go to Martin first? Then we'll get to yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to probably reiterate a few things that have already been said. But one is that we need to concentrate on what we can do and what we can change. Recognizing that a lot of the solutions and issues are with others. So our responsibility, and Kerry go around, is to make sure they are aware of the impact of the decisions they are making. But what we need to do, and I like this, the title of this report is about mitigating avoidable patient harm. And when you look at, if you look at 9.1, number 1, I'm going to pick on this one because I think it gives some numbers. And what I'm going to ask is some questions of the consequence. It says that in the red category, there were 344 accepted and released, 41 were not. Now, what I'm not clear of, I did talk to Andy actually over breakfast about this. What happens to the 41? What happens? What do we do as a consequence of having been refused, if you like, the opportunity to release a patient who arguably is amber, because that's why they're still in the back. I'm assuming they are. They're still in the back of an ambulance when we've got a red caller. They're waiting for to be answered. So that's the one issue. So what do we do? What is our action plan? Secondly, do we keep any ambulances back? You know, once we're exhausted, do we send an ambulance out to an amber, knowing that there's potentially a red down the road and we get all these ambulances tied up? That's a question that I think is important. And the other one actually came out of, I'm sorry, there's 3 questions. I won't let you forget them, I promise. The other one came out of the patient story, where she was eventually advised, interestingly, to take the patient herself to the hospital. Now, I'm wondering when that advice kicks in as a normal course of events, you know, that when you get somebody that's got a red, let's say, and you can't answer it, are they advised, or should they be advised? Is that an action that's included in your protocols to do that themselves rather than wait? So there's a number of questions in there, Chair.
Okay. I think Lee's probably the best person.
All 3 of them, Chair.
All 3. Well done, Lee.
I think all 3, and I've tried to jot them down as you went. So first off, if I talk about immediate release directions, so there's a number of processes that sit behind that, most of which are included in the immediate release, the All Wales immediate release protocol. So we have a signed up by the Chief Executive protocol that we deploy. So the first is a matter of the immediate escalation. So we have a process that ensures that takes place into our operational delivery unit that then connects with health faults in the moment. So dynamic escalation occurs. There is then a DATEX process to ensure that we capture the incident, which then leads to the required investigation. Each week, off the back of that, there are 2 reports that are created. The first is a Chief Exec report that Jason shares in with Judith at the Centre for Overall Monitoring. And there is a Chief Operating version of that, where I provide an outline to my colleagues of all reds and a dip sample of the ambulance. There are too many to do all of them, but I provide a dip sample of those outcomes to the Chief Operating Officers. So I'm quite confident that we've got an immediate escalation process, we've got a recording process, we've got an investigation process, we've got a sharing process. What's good for us coming in behind that is we're just concluding an internal audit that's testing our compliance to that. We're going to have some stuff to learn, unsurprisingly, and you'll see that given your position in the audit committee in due course. The second one, in terms of, in essence, what you're talking about there is, do we ring fence resource to attend red incidents only? The straightforward answer to that is no. We have a significant number of Amber 1 incidents that are waiting on our stack. Of course, those patients are sick, and so we will always send a resource to a waiting patient as soon as we practically can, and that will always be the position for us. So we don't have we just don't have the capacity for red ring fencing. Now, ideally, and this is going to be a necessary part of achieving red performance. Red performance requires resources in the right place at the right time, because we know it's an 8-minute target. And so ideally, we would have the headroom in our resource to be able to move that resource around the country, to be in the right place at the right time, to hit those red incidents as they come in. Sadly, the utilisation of our resource is far, far too high. We don't have the headroom in order to do that. The last one, in terms of, there's likely to be a way, we would advise you to perhaps make your own way. A couple of points. First, of course, is us providing estimated time of arrival. And we know that we've done that very much on the premise of empowering individuals to make choices for themselves. And we genuinely believe in that, and we try to give as accurate estimated time of arrival as we can. And we monitor that as well during my weekly performance meetings. We have an analyst who checks our ETAs and how good we are arriving within the ETAs that we provide to people. So that's the first point. The second, though, is in essence what we're potentially talking about here are non-clinicians giving that sort of advice, which is difficult. Now, of course, what we do have is our clinical support desk trying to stream as much of our demand as we possibly can. And if if our clinicians can form a view that it's in the interest of the patient in order to do that, then they would offer that advice. So that's how those three areas are currently running. Hopefully, some of that's helpful.
On the last one, I won't prolong it. It was interesting that the lady was eventually told or advised to take her father to the hospital herself. Was that through the desk, the clinical desk, or was that through?
Without having the detail of that case, I'm not.
Let me put it another way then. Would you expect the clinical desk to kick in at some stage with people who are waiting a long time? I mean, one of her problems, her distress, to some extent, was caused by the vagueness, if you like, of the advice. I think, anyway, listening to her about what she should do. Her anxiety was, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I'm not sure when they're going to turn up. And then eventually she was told by somebody, not advised, within the episodes to take him to hospital. And I think that was sound advice. I'm not, I just think maybe it should be more of a normal protocol than somebody keeps nagging. I've been on the other end of this phone once, not that long ago, and I kept ringing up, and my anxiety was the same as hers about what to do. And the advice I was getting, we'll be there as soon as we can, which is great advice, but not when you're on the other end of the phone wondering what to do and how long they're going to be.
So there are two elements of this. The first is we have to be cognizant of where the pressures are existing, and there is a danger that if it's a case of telling callers go to the emergency department, there is a risk that we're compounding the issue at the emergency department by telling people to go to one of the bottlenecks that exist, and that has the potential to leave our ambulances outside the emergency department waiting for longer to get patients into the department, and therefore continue to render them unavailable to respond to the community. The clinical support desk will work on two flows primarily. The first is a push of activity, which is at a low acuity designated activity for a remote assessment before dispatch. The other part is what we say is stack safety. So that's our clinicians streaming down our polling incident stack to look at the opportunities. Number one, to keep people as safe as we can whilst waiting. Number two, to then attempt to try and manage some of that activity in a different way. And for some, that may be, is it going to be in your interest to make your way to the emergency department? Of course, the reality of that, and I want to be frank, I think people should understand the degree of pressure that exists, because Julie talked about a 3-hour wait on an amber. So, of course, issue number one, 3-hour wait for an amber. And ideally, we would have the capacity available to us that the 3-hour wait doesn't occur to begin with. So 3 hours is quite a long time, but there can be in the region of 120, 150 patients waiting on our stack. And we have a finite number of clinicians. And so they work incredibly hard to get around to those calls as quickly and as expediently as they can. Equally, whilst our call handlers are undertaking welfare checks back to scene to see if anything has been altering for the patient in the interim. So at core and at principle, I'm not saying that you're saying anything that's wrong. It's just trying to operationalise that in the context of all the pressures and the flows that are existing.
Thankfully, I think it just highlights the huge complication of this sort of issue. Fix one thing and you make something else worse somewhere. Okay. There was a hand up remotely, and Brendan. So should we go to Brendan first? I think that's gone down anyway. So Brendan.
Yes, just to emphasise what Lee was saying, it just highlights the importance of this extra arm of a clinical desk now being developed to maximise the full potential, because the ECNS tool that we've now implemented. That is being seen as a significant improvement. We're going to have to monitor the progress with that and audit, but it's already looking promising from that perspective. One of the reasons, obviously, that people, are being told if you can take relative response to coroner's letters, prevention of future death letters, where relatives have said, had I known I was going to be waiting, I would have taken my relative to the hospital. So where it is appropriate advice, that will be given. There are some clinical areas, unstable fractures, very elderly fractures, where there simply is no answer other than a conveyance. And we just have to try to ensure that we get that resource available as quickly as possible. The other point, when I originally put my hand up, was going back to the question of, are we sharing this information at high levels? So as Jason said, we do share this information with our peer groups, but I think it's important to note that through the peer groups, we also share that information with the chief medical officer and the chief nursing officer. And so we triangulate the way that that information is being put into Welsh Government, so that the minister is fully aware of the predicaments that we're facing. So yes, we're doing everything that we can to ensure that this is given as high profile as possible. I am told by the medical directors that it is regularly discussed within their directorates, and it is on the risk registers of the health boards, although I haven't checked that recently.
Good, thank you, that's helpful.
I might actually just layer in further on what Brendan was just saying to Kerry. So in the non-executive side of things, the chairs of the quality committee for the health boards and for ourselves come together on a regular basis. And I know that Rebecca is very articulate in voicing our position and our concerns in space. So just as well as the executive group that we've spoken to very heavily, I think on the non-exec side, there is a chairs quality group that comes together on a regular basis. And I'm very conscious that Beth takes all of this into there and voices it on behalf. Good, thank you.
I think, Kevin, did you have your hand up? But it's gone. Bethan's hand up, so Bethan, with you.
I'm just very quickly, Chair. It was in response to Kerry's points sometime earlier. It was just to play in for the audience the fact that although the remit of the vice chairs is quite specific, they in recent times have been taking a real interest in our dilemmas as well, and are actively asking questions around our staff welfare in particular, but also our patient challenges. And I share our time loss runtime charts with them regularly, and I get a good take up of response and activity. And Lee has mentioned the Cardiff and Vale example. Jason mentioned the Cardiff and Vale example earlier, and there is an interest in that group, and indeed from the minister into the vice chair's group over and above their remit. So it's kind of a bit more flavour to answer Kerry's points. Thank you.
Good, thank you. It's helpful as well. And to Bethan.
Thank you, Claire. Just very quickly to follow through on what Liam has just said. He's right in saying that I take every opportunity to raise this at the meetings of the chairs of the quality committees. Unfortunately, the meeting met for the first time in October. It hasn't met for more than 14 months prior to that because of system pressures. The meetings were stood down. So I did raise this issue at the October meeting, and I'm hoping the agenda is yet to be confirmed for the next meeting in January, but I have asked if we can have a specific item around this very topic.
Thank you, Bethan. So just looking about, I think we're probably done on that item. So just from the governance point of view, in terms of recommendations, we note the report and the progress made. We have the handover lost hours and the extreme cause exacerbation that can create. We note the estimated patient harm for the period which is starting in December to March. We note the impact of the hospital handover lost hours. We note that there is evidence of significant handover reduction in Cardiff and Vale, which we're grateful for. We'll find out more about that next week. And we've had a chance to consider whether there's any further action available for we've dealt with that, have we? Good. Move on then to item 10, which is corporate management risk register. Trish, shall I hand over to you for that?
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. So the board will have 18 principal risks in front of it today in Annex 1. All 18 have been reviewed and validated by the executive management team and the Finance and Performance Committee and the Quality Committee, Quest Committee recently. People and Culture Committee will review their allocated risks when they meet on Tuesday, and you'll see the highlight reports from both Quest and Finance and Performance Committee do go into some detail on their review. The executive summary in the pack pulls out the 4 highest rated risks, really to demonstrate that there is momentum and focus in those committee forums and in the executive management team, as well as at this meeting and other meetings, as we've seen from the paper that we just took and from the chief executive's paper as well. Just to make sure that those controls are strengthened, that the actions are in place. And you can see from the board assurance framework that there are a number of actions, and you can see the progress on those actions as well. The agendas of the committees are built around both cycle, but also the highest rated risks of that committee. So we look at those risks and we build the agenda around that to make sure that there is also a focus on them. So the 4 that are in front of you, the first 2 are risk 223, impact on patients due to our inability to reach them in the community, and 224, which is the impact of significant handover delays. Both remain at 25. And again, I won't rehearse that. You've got the details there. We've just spent some time going through that in the paper we just had. Risk 160, which is the impact of high staff absence rates, and 201, reputational damage, both remain at 20, and they will be discussed in some detail next week with Paul and People and Culture Committee. And we know significant risks like this don't move quickly. They're not going to change very quickly, but I give assurance to the board that they are reviewed regularly. There's some good detailed discussion, not only in the risk item, but in all the papers and the discussion around that in the agenda. Lastly, the board is asked to note the closure of one risk 311, which is the inability of the estate to cope with increasing FTEs. That's now closing, and there's a new risk in development. And there's one new risk in relation to the impact and result of industrial action that's being worked up, and to note.
Good, thank you very much, Trish. Joe, any questions? Doesn't like it. We asked to note that the estate risk of 311 has been closed. We note, as Trish has just been saying, there's a new risk about industrial action and the review of the board assurance framework. Do no further questions anywhere. Good. All right, let's move on to item 11, monthly integrated quality and performance report. A huge amount of data here. This particular item I just want to reflect upon is a good example of the point I made right at the outset, where other committees are really involved in the deep dive. This pack of data, which is huge, is seen in detail by our quality committee, by our finance performance committee, and will be seen by our people and culture committee when they meet very shortly. So it's clearly not the purpose of this board to start exploring that data in huge forensic detail, because that is being done elsewhere. I think it's more for this board to ensure that we are satisfied that that scrutiny has occurred. And obviously, for those members of the board who don't sit on those committees, give them the opportunity to ask questions which they may not have the opportunity to raise elsewhere. So on that basis, Rachel, we'll just hand over to you for any headlines, and then we'll see what questions people have got.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yeah, as you say, this is the data is slightly updated to try to always make sure whatever committee this goes to. So this is the October data, so the committees previously have seen September data. Having said that, the story, the narrative really has shifted much between September and October. Certainly wouldn't pull out anything we've talked about already in terms of the EMS service. We've had a big discussion about that. So I think just a couple of things I was going to pull out was that we continue to see metrics within the one service not being quite where we want them, particularly in terms of call handling, but also in terms of clinical win-back times. And you can see these are the actions that we've taken. I think probably just the reason for putting that out is that come back to board at a later stage. of what we've had on the one peer review recently. And clearly, commissioners in that peer review group flagged to our attention that those working times are important, times are important. And we had a conversation with Colin a number of times about the fact that perhaps we need to raise the profile of some of this discussion and talk about it a bit more as a board as a very important element of our service. So we'll just raise that. I think it's enough said on that one. And the other one I was just going to mention was we had a good discussion at F&P about the fact that NEPs don't often focus, I suppose, as much on those indicators and what lies beneath some of those indicators. It's a very high level indicators necessarily in this report, so we need to do a bit more of a deep dive F&P next time on some of those NEPs indicators to get a better flavour for how that service works and performs. Other than that, yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Just looking around to see if there are any other questions. Whilst we're waiting, I'll just reinforce an issue about 111. I think it actually potentially plays a bit to Martin's sort of questions about mitigating factors for some of the issues that we're seeing with handover delays and so on. It seems to me the 111 is the start of a patient's potential journey through the whole system. And we are running the 111 system right across Wales. It is something that we should probably focus a bit more on. I think there is a lot more attention being turned to that. That's just one of the levers that we potentially can have. Bethan has a hand up, so thank you, Bethan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment from me, really. With regards to the performance generally, I think we've discussed that and it confirms the difficulties we're seeing. I just wanted to thank officers and their teams for the continued efforts to improve the PADR compliance and performance, because as colleagues will know, this is something that I've raised previously in terms of wanting to see that improving trend, and I'm really pleased to see that despite the continuing challenges and immense pressures on teams, that we are seeing a continuing improvement in that trend. So thank you all for that.
Good. Okay. So, oh yes, Gareth.
I just wanted to ask, partly due to the good session we had yesterday on culture, about our indicators on culture and the metrics around that. So, are there any plans to think about how we can develop these within the report? So I appreciate it's difficult to measure culture, but I think also at the staff roadshows there's been some great conversations. I'd like to think as a board we have some sort of oversight that journey.
Thanks, very good question, Kerry. I think all eyes are turning to Angie.
It will probably be Rachel as well, because we have had some discussions about this. Some of the metrics that we're hoping that we would put in and probably clearly showing that link would be that absence is still a really powerful indicator around culture, discipline cases, respect and resolution cases, engagement levels when we do participate in a staff survey, retention, turnover rates. So I think for us, we've got quite a lot of the metrics. We just need to link them more to the fact that they do really give you an indication of culture. So I think we will make sure next year it's more explicit around those cultural indicators, but most definitely those would be the ones that we would definitely expect to see. And some are probably a much softer metrics around feedback, roadshows, engagement that we get on a regular basis.
I think that's helpful. And I would just add, by the way, that what we haven't talked about, we talked a lot about the impact on patients with the handover delay and so on. I know it is very much not mind. We haven't actually mentioned it so far today about the impact that has on our staffing. And that is a potentially really serious issue, because as they become more demotivated, so we could see more sickness, we could see more people choosing to leave, follow other careers, we can see less enthusiasm for people to join the service in the first place. Which just makes the matter worse. So actually focusing on those kind of cultural issues within our workforce is something we must attend to. And it's natural that our attention and our focus is to the people suffering immediate harm, of course, but actually if we don't also have regard to what's happening within our workforce, then we could end up finding that the symptoms get worse by neglect, really.
Jason, thanks, Jeremy. At that point, I just wanted to build on, actually, it's beyond the metrics, Kerry, but the practice is some of the practical things we've started to do here. So obviously we have So we had a discussion yesterday, didn't we, about culture and how we forward on the practical front, got to do with behaviours. We've recently had leadership symposium with 300 of our leaders nationally going through a programme of development, starting a programme of development. I think the first follow-up session is Monday, I think next week. 3 of those already programmed in. We've obviously got the sexual safety workplace survey and other things we're practically doing around, culture, behaviours, and both workplace experience that we have for our people. And the final point I just wanted to make that is that next year's IMTP, so the integrated medium-term plan, essentially for those listening online, the business plan for the organisation for the next year and beyond, is going to have an equal weighting to 3 key areas next year: people, so culture of people, business efficiency, because of the obvious pressures that we've got that we'll read more about in the months around financial sustainability, and it's thirdly on kind of developments, service development. So there'll be a much greater weighting focus in the business plan next year on our people than we've ever had before. And I'm putting that on equal footing, if you like, with the routine data. So on.
Good, thank you very much. We've got Rachel and also and it's Paul. So we're going to Paul first and then across to Rachel. Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Jason's picked up one of the issues I was going to raise, which is the emphasis on people in the IMTP next year. But the other thing that we are looking at next week is the initial discussions about our new people and culture plan. And we've also talked with Rachel in terms of performance metrics around culture and around some of the softer issues. So I think from those 3 perspectives, we should come up with significant performance measures for next year. Some will be quite hard, as Angie has said, around sickness, absence, etc., turnover rates, but there will be softer indicators as well, particularly in terms of our engagement with staff. And again, next week, Estelle is bringing forward the engagement plan. So that also helps us to have a better understanding of our staff and how they're feeling about the organisation. So I think there's a lot to look forward to capture all those metrics going forward.
Thank you, Paul. Rachel.
Thanks. Yeah. So just really more on the kind of process. So we remember we signed off our quality and performance management framework in March. What that says is that we need to have metrics at board level, which is what this is, that's at a high level reflect all things we think are important. Then underneath that series, all the way down the organisation, detailed metrics that allow people to move through some of those issues in a bit more detail and around that level. So as the point I was making is that each year we committed for the board level metrics to review, are these the right ones? Do we need to have different ones that kind of reflect the things that are important to us? We did that in July. We talked about those well-being metrics which are here now, one of which is not quite there yet, which is about inclusion and diversity. But there'd be opportunity every year, and I think it's really important to kind of reflect each year on discussions we've had through the year, things that are important to us, and then reflect that in metrics. We won't, unless the board tells me others, I'm not proposing to change these board level metrics other than once a year, unless there's something very important. But through this year now, we'll be doing that ready for next year. And I think it's a really good point you've raised about something that we can add to it, I think.
Good, thanks, Rachel. I think that's it. No remotely grand. So what we're asked to do on this item then is that we're asked to consider and determine if the report provides sufficient assurance, which I think we do, whether any further information, scrutiny or assurance is required. I think we've discussed that around some of the metrics, and whether there's any further remedial action to be undertaken through the executive. And I don't think we are requesting that at this time. So that's good. So we move on then to item 12, which is financial performance. And again, this is an item which I propose we'll take fairly briefly. The paper is very comprehensive. It provides all the information that we really require, I think. It's been through the Finance and Performance Committee where it's received, I know, a lot of scrutiny, and through the exec team as well. situation does appear that we're all being well, going to continue on the trajectory of having a balanced budget by the end of the year with a number of caveats. There are some levels of uncertainty and risks which we recognise. So our thanks to Chris and his team for producing, a very detailed paper. And I know, Chris, if you're happy with that, we'll just go straight to any questions and then just see whether you want to kind of compare this stuff. So are there any questions that anybody wishes to raise, specifically with Chris on financial performance? Doesn't look as though there are. So I think perhaps because it would just be helpful to know whether anything has substantially changed since the paper was written, or anything you want to just draw attention to. Kevin's hand up. Oh, Kevin, sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say, Chris and the team from an F&P committee point of view are really quite close to all of this and understand the kind of risks and the potential benefits of being as close to it as they are. It's a from a non-exec point of view, it's a professional sort of stance that's really welcome, because it makes sure that we are assured in governance terms that we understand the risk and we understand the mitigations that are going into it, both short, medium and long term. And I think that's an important consideration as well. So just wanted to make that point, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. That's really helpful. And it does underline it's the work of the committees that have the duty to really unpack all the details. And obviously with finance, it's always a changing, but it's usually a relatively slowly change. We've seen this kind of projection of hopefully a balanced position at the end of the year, month on month. We're continuing to see that. But
just one or two things, Chair, if I could quickly then, and picking up on what both the man Kevin said actually on that point about risk, and hopefully what you've seen come through is the start of what we just write between ourselves and government as a bit of a more de-risking of the position in EU, actually, which you would expect as we go to the second half of the year now. We know that we've managed a significant level of risk this year that we've had to mitigate through from a financial perspective. We're following a mid-year review with government and confirmation of some of the funding streams that we were seeing within our position forecast. We started to reduce a few of those risks and started to de-risk the plan in year, as you say, and hopefully that will continue, which is welcome to support the rest of the year. I did just want to add one update to paragraph 44 around capital monies for this year. Just to update the board as on top of the amount that's in that paragraph that we've been fortunate enough to receive from Wales NHS capital programme slippage funding that's being reallocated by government. We already had, when the paper was written, confirmation of just over £500,000 to help further some of our decarbonisation schemes. We've now this week had confirmed another £1.3 million for the continuing development of South East Wales fleet workshop on the move site that we purchased with government support back in last financial year. That one is linked to the vacation and asset transfer of Kenny College, which we finally managed to get off site this year as well. So a bit of a double benefit for us in that context. It all has to be spent by the end of March. We've got plans in place to do that. So that's hopefully good news and welcome for the board. And finally, as you say, just to note, partly the conflict we had in development yesterday as well was clearly what hopefully whilst not taking any eyes off any balls to landed this year, does allow us a little bit of head if you need to get into next year, and that's got to be open and is unusual focus now, because the financial aid going forward beyond the end of this financial year, is not getting rosy.
No, indeed. Good, thanks, Chris. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, good. In that case, we move on to item 13, integrated medium-term plan. And Rachel, I think it's up to you.
It is, yes, and I think exactly the same as the financial board. We discussed this in MP. So there wasn't anything particular to plan or add. Any questions?
No, getting a. Oh, good. Kevin.
Chair, same comment with regard to Rachel and her team and finance and performance committee. Yeah, we do delve into the depths of a lot of the data that the team brings to us, And again, the assurance that comes with that activity is dealt with at Finance and Performance Committee.
Okay, which of course is exactly how it should be. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And probably just worth mentioning that attention now is already turning to next year's version of the 3-year plan.
Yeah.
Comes round with great regularity, and we started talking about. We've had 2 sessions on that so far, both for the development session. So a lot of work going on that. Jason said there's sort of 3 pillars to that which are emerging. Okay, we're ahead of time, which is great. We have a comfort break now, so let's do that. It's 11:15. So can us just 11 o'clock? All right. So we'll take a 15-minute break and we'll reconvene at 11 o'clock and we'll see everybody then. Check, are you all able to hear us remotely? Thumbs up. Fantastic. Good. Very much. Right. So we move on to item 14, which we welcome Gerald Jones from HIW. Are you there, Gerald?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and you can hear us.
Yeah, all clear. What I'll try and do is I'll try and share my presentation. I hope this works. We've had a lightning strike at one of our data centers, so I hope we've had some issues with IT, so I hope this is able to share with you.
Okay, and just to introduce the item before you crack on, this is obviously looking at the inspection from Welsh Ambulance in relation to the HIW's work.
Yeah, this is our annual. This is a presentation of our annual report.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see that?
We can. Yeah.
Hang on. Great stuff. So yeah, just want to introduce myself. I'm Gerald Jones. I'm a Senior Healthcare Inspector with Healthcare Inspectorate Wales, and I'm the Relationship Manager for WAST. I don't know if you can hear and see. There's a little video playing there. Can you hear that?
No, we've lost. No, we've lost your screen.
Okay,
we can just
no
see
problem.
you at the moment.
Okay. How about that? Can you see that?
No, just you.
Just me again. Okay, what I'll do, I'll just read through the presentation, then I'll run through it pretty quick so you can, so we can ask some questions at the end if that's.
We do have a fairly limited time scale.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. So just give you some details about HIW. So we're the regulator of independent healthcare and the inspectorate of NHS healthcare in Wales. What we do, so we look at the quality, safety and effectiveness of services being provided to the people of Wales, drawing attention to good practice where we find it and calling out poor or bad practice that could potentially harm patients. We aim to provide assurance, promote improvement and influence healthcare providers. So over the last year, we had to adopt our approaches. We had significant change. So yeah, we had to adapt in order to ensure that we continue to check that the people in Wales were receiving good quality care. We introduced new ways of working to ensure that we discharged our statutory functions whilst being as flexible and adaptable as possible to ensure we did not add any undue burden to a system already under significant pressures. We continued with a full range of assurance and inspection activities, building on our enhanced ways of working, and to take action where standards were not met, but also to support the broad recovery of healthcare services. So just give you some statistics in regards to our activities. We undertook 60 on-site inspections, 139 quality checks, 7 IRMA inspections. We also dealt with 514 concerns. 240 of these were classified as medium to high risk. Our on-site inspections and quality checks covered a variety range of locations that have hospital wards, including emergency departments, maternity units, oncology, cardiac, pediatric units, step-down facilities, and minor injuries units. Key themes coming through from our work in regards to secondary care. We identified that there was significant and sustained pressures on emergency care providers due to the volume of patients, which impacted care. There was a clear difference between scheduled and unscheduled care, with more areas requiring improvement within unscheduled care. Staff questionnaires indicated low morale. However, this did not seem to impact on the experienced patients who said staff were kind and compassionate. There was lack of compliance in regards to mandatory training, which is which is probably due majority to the impact of COVID. And we also identified medicine management continued to be a concern for HIW. We also undertook general practice inspections. We did 25 checks across Wales. Broadly, the findings we had were there was evidence of practice of sharing of ideas and good practice. Change implemented to ensure environments were safe and could be easily cleaned in response to the challenges of COVID-19. There was evidence of a lack of some cleaning policies and full cleaning schedules available for scrutiny, and there was a lack of completed up-to-date policies and risk assessments available. We also did dental inspections. We did 9 on-site inspections and numerous quality checks remotely. There were there was positive findings, efforts made to accommodate patients with additional needs. There was good consideration of bilingual requirements, and there was effective COVID-19 procedures in place to reduce the risk. Improvements we identified was the recording and ensuring staff had completed mandatory training, lack of up-to-date risk assessments and infection prevention and control policies, and there weren't regular audits being undertaken in regards to the quality of care and treatment. In regards to Welsh Ambulance Service overview, our work to seek assurance in the safety and quality of care within the Trust comprised of the final part of our local review, exploring the impact of patients being delayed on the back of ambulances. We gave consideration to themes and trends presented by concerns and whistleblowers. We also monitored data sets and intelligence that was shared with us. During this period, we have seen evidence of the Trust working very hard to maintain the service they provide, with a clear understanding that there are significant pressures and issues within the entire healthcare system, which is out of your control. The Trust has been very open and honest with HIW, responding promptly to requests and information and data. We've observed good levels of scrutiny and challenge at quality and safety meetings, and have been assured that senior leaders recognise the issues and are committed to improvement. We understand that staffing has been a significant challenge for the Trust as it continues to see the COVID-19 related absences impacting their work. We understand that this will not be simple to resolve, and we will continue to monitor the Trust's approach through our work. Then in regards to our local review of patient experience while waiting in the back of ambulances, we found that there were delays in handover, had impacted negatively on patients and ambulance staff. Staff told us they were frustrated waiting for long periods of time and felt demoralised. We did make recommendations through our review, which we recognised were a substantial challenge to the Trust and wider NHS system. However, to improve patient safety and tackle the impact on staff well-being, these recommendations must be acted upon. As I said, engagement between HIW and the executive team for the Trust remains positive and constructive, with a welcome approach for scrutiny involved. Our future priorities, so this year, we will focus on driving and strengthening our engagement, improving and modernising our ways of working, and understanding our communities better in relation to equality, diversity and inclusion. We'll focus on the quality of healthcare provided to people and communities as they access, use and move between services. We'll adapt our approach to ensure we are responsive to any emerging risks to patient safety. We'll work collaboratively to drive systems and services to identify improvement within healthcare, and support and develop our workforce to enable them and the organisation to deliver our priorities. That's a real whistle-stop tour of the presentation, and I'd welcome any questions that you may have.
Good. Well, thank you for the speed of that. That was brilliant. And it's not surprising that the findings that you've got are issues that we've been discussing this morning around staff morale, around the whole system challenge, and about patient safety. We've been considering those at some length this morning already. Yeah. Of course, continue to do so very much in the spotlight. So thank you for that. There's a hand up. I think it's Paul. So shall we go to Paul first?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Hi, Gareth. Interesting report looking at different parts of the healthcare system, but I didn't get a sense of an overall view about the system itself. So, for example, one of the things that we often talk about is limited access to primary care and dental care impacting on the Welsh Ambulance Service. And I just wonder, is there a way of pulling together the findings from each part of the health system into giving an overall view about the health system itself? It seems quite loose in terms of just looking at one part after another part after another part, when we're not really seeing the connections between those parts and the impacts on each other. And I just wonder if that's something that HIW will be thinking about doing over the coming year.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, we do discuss these issues in depth with health boards during our regular meetings and updates with health boards. We attend sort of as you said, maybe dental committees, primary care committees, those type of things, and we do highlight, saying, there is pressure on. We do identify there's pressure on WAST and on people trying to access these services. We do try and put the ball back into their court to say, you have a responsibility to provide, comprehensive services for patients who sometimes need emergency care and treatment, sort of dental treatment. Most health boards, they do have emergency access to sort of there's clinics for dental and those type of things. But yeah, we do appreciate, it is sometimes fragmented, the services available. We are actively working with the health boards to look at these areas, and it's definitely an area we'll consider. And leave it with me, Paul, and we can have a discussion again if you want to, and highlight the issue further.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. I think, I understand the issues you're talking about, but in terms of HIW's report to the health community, it'd be useful to see a consolidated report where you look at what impact one part of the system is having on another in terms of quality of patient care, because that doesn't come through.
Yeah, no, fully appreciate your approach there, and we'll definitely consider it moving forward.
Thanks, Gareth.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, so if I may just follow up on Paul's question, it may just be of note that Audit Wales are actually doing a piece of work at the moment, which is about the whole system, and they are currently focused on the back door of hospitals, thinking about hospital flow and subsequently what the benefit that might then bring. As far as I'm aware, HIW and other departments in Wales are very engaged in work. My comment was just really to relatively new, but I would just acknowledge the very open and positive conversation that we do have with HIW. I know that Wendy and Claire previously had regular conversations and highly valued the time that they spent with Caroline. And I would, I'm in the early stages of doing that, but I think it is important that we take the ideology, if you like, the approach of Wales in terms of having a facilitative approach to regulation and understanding how we work together to secure high quality services and recognise what the challenges are in a positive environment. And certainly my experience so far is that that's been a really good relationship to have with.
Good, thank you. I've spent the last 30 years working with regulators of all kinds in England, from housing to health to aviation and finance. The positive working relationships with regulators is absolutely in my heart the key to success. Absolutely not about adversarial, it's about working together, solving the same problem. You're on the same page. Good. Okay. Any other final questions looking around? Doesn't look like it. So thank you very much for that, Gerald. A short item, but well received. So thank you very much. Oh, hang on. No, sorry. I see the hand up. Bethan, you've got a hand up. You're blocked by a chair here, Bethan. You've got it.
Thank you, Chair. Bwrdd Gerallt, thank you for your presentation this morning. We obviously discussed your annual report at Quest as well recently. The report highlights the impact of the handover delays quite clearly and how that impacts negatively on patients and staff. Just interested really, presumably you're presenting to other health boards as well on your annual report, and just wondering if there's any feedback coming from colleagues with regards specifically to the impact on patients, in particular as a result of handover delays, and if there's anything you can share with us on that.
Yeah, talk Bethan. There are relationship managers with each and every trust within health board within Wales. What we have identified, we fully recognise that there are major issues in regards to patient flow, and it's the back end of the service that's also creating a majority of issues for WAST as well. So what we are planning to do is we're in undertaking our assessments for next year's inspections activity. And I'm highly, I really hope there's going to be quite a large piece to do with patient flow, the back end, and also we're planning to look at your immediate release protocols. So this will be an area that we'll also be looking at to see if there are any specific areas, specific health boards that are providing difficulties not releasing ambulances, those type of things. But that's all in the planning stage at the moment, and of course we'll be in contact with you. But yeah, we do speak to our colleagues across other health boards, identifying these sort of major issues for WAST and the flow of patients. And yeah, there is work upcoming in regards to look at these areas.
Diolch, Gerard. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Bethan. Okay, I think that's done. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
See you next time. Thank you very much. So we can move on to committee reports. We've got reports here. They're well documented. So we'll go to each of the chairs and ask them just to spend a couple of moments looking at any particular highlights they may want to point out, given that we've all had a chance, I'm sure, to read the papers. And Kerry, charitable funds, go to you first.
Thank you. So just 3 key points I wanted to raise with the board today. One is that we did sign off, I think it was the end of last year, an audit, a full audit with Audit Wales, and there's been some time pressures around that. That's due to start on the 1st of December. So I think, Chris, it's fair to say it's a fairly tight time scale. But obviously for us, you know, that timeline is finance. So monitoring that closely. We had a presentation from Nicola from Health Our Charities, which was actually really helpful for the committee. So Nicola was talking to us about the last 9 years and how that charity has developed. And I think there's some very helpful lessons in there for us, and an offer from Nicola to continue to support us. So that was helpful. And then my final point was just around the strategic review. So Tarnside are now well underway with the strategic review that West have commissioned them to undertake. And I think it's been really thought-provoking. So I think several board members have had conversations with Patrick, and I think for us as a board, we will have to decide the level of ambition, and there are lots of opportunities. So I think that's, you know, that's going to come back to us in a couple of different forms next year. But we've got board development session in February, I think, Trish, and then there'll be a paper coming for decision towards the end of the financial year. So I think it's really exciting, and you know, I hope that boards will embrace the opportunities that is going to bring for us. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. Yes, I had a very interesting conversation with him the other day, and it is thought-provoking. You're right. Very much. Any questions anybody got to raise in terms of the charitable funds committee? So that's good. Okay, Kevin, we're going to come to you next then from the Academic Partnership Committee.
Couple of very quick points then, Chair. Relatively new committee, as everybody is aware of, developing the cycle of business under Tricia's watchful eye, and that's maturing. We've taken some soundings against the 3 priorities that we developed a couple of meetings ago, and we've presented to the Welsh Government on progress to date. We haven't seen the white smoke, as Estelle describes it, of confirmation of our university status yet, but they're treating us as if we have that, in the sense of they're taking reports and expecting us to embed our strategy into the IMTP, which is ongoing. And we took an item into closed session, which we'll probably touch on this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And again, any questions? Anybody? Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Bethan, to you next, I think, then, for the Quest committee paper.
Thank you, Chair. As always, much of our meeting on the 10th of November was focused on aspects resulting in patient harm. In the alert section, as members will see, we've discussed a lot of this in today's meeting already, so I won't labour on this, but basically the reports we considered provided a very clear picture for us about the level and breadth of harm being caused to individuals as a result of system pressures. The committee were at pains to discuss and very aware of all the work that is being undertaken by everybody in WAST and how they're using their networks to try and to continue to escalate this and make sure this issue is at the top of everybody's agenda, not just our own. However, despite this, the committee did feel, and as the report indicates, that we would really like more pace attached to this, both in terms of system and a strategic level. So I mentioned earlier, I think it's important we all continue to do that. I know we do, and I'm very pleased that we do that. The second point relates to risks, which I'll come on to in a second. In the advice section, we made reference to the patient story earlier on today, both Liam and I did. And the only thing I want to add is the story that we heard from the daughter. She used such strong words, such emotive words, things like, this is outrageous, this is shameful. And the distress caused to individuals, the very, very real distress caused to individuals as a result of the system pressures, it's palpable. Lee presented his ops report in a different format for the first time at this meeting, and we all welcomed that. Actually, we had quite a discussion saying that we felt that that new format was really good. We received the annual report from HIW, which we've discussed now, so I won't say any more about that. In the Assure section, we also received Audit Wales's review on the quality governance arrangements, and this review recognises the extreme service pressures. Within the review, there's some key mentions of our quality strategy, and there's references made to the challenges we've had in progressing as we would have liked to, given the many challenges. So the committee will continue to keep close to the progress of the quality strategy, and particularly the implementation plan. We had a really interesting discussion around the dementia update. It was a very, very positive discussion, this one. Committee members welcomed this because it evidenced a breadth of really good work that's been ongoing by colleagues across WAST. And as a result of that, I'm sure, the WAST team have been asked to lead the refresh of the UK Emergency Services Dementia Commitment, which I think is a credit to all those involved and to WAST more broadly. Item 14 makes reference to our committee priority, which is around the duty of quality and duty of candour. And all I want to say is that in our next Quest meeting, which is in February next year, a lot of that meeting will be dedicated to discussing how prepared we are for the implementation of that Act next year. And finally then, looking at the risks, we've discussed the two risks that Quest continue to own in detail today. So I won't say any more because I think we've said them, other than to say one of our three key risks, risk 303, that's been closed as a result of all actions being completed. So at that point, I'll stop and I'm very happy to take questions or comments, Chair.
Thank you, Bethan.
Chairman, can I?
Yes, of course, yes.
I notice in your report, Bethan, that you pick up, particularly, I think it was the complaint issue, the Betsy Cadwallader seems to be an area where we have particular issues and difficulties, disproportionately speaking. Is that coming through in Quest in other areas of work you do?
I think, I mean, I'm sure one of the officers would be better placed to answer that in detail, Martin, but I think it's fair to say from all the information we have and the weekly reports we get, we can see there is significant pressure up in that area in North Wales, particularly in terms of handover delays, etc. So I would say personally, yes, we are seeing that across the board, but I'm not sure, Jason, who would be best placed to add to those comments.
Thanks, Bethan. I mean, I think any number of colleagues could comment. I mean, I would agree with I think the reflection you've just offered. You know, if we think about some of the operational metrics, you know, handover lost hours or compliance to immediate release directions, say, you know, it would be fair to say that Betsy Cadwallader, along with a number of other health boards across Wales, remain substantially challenged for us in that area. I think the challenges are probably more acute there, for a range of reasons, but they're certainly not on their own in terms of impact on us.
Still, you want to do? Oh, sorry, Bethany. But okay,
No, not at all. I was only thanking Jason for adding that detail.
Great. There's a little delay on the line there. Estelle.
So on a separate point, actually, and forgive me, I ought to know this, but I note on the section around dementia that the WAS team has been funded, or the dementia programme has been funded through Integrated Care Fund. The Integrated Care Fund is no more because it's been replaced by the Regional Investment Fund. So I'm just checking that we have a sustainable pathway for the funding of that work.
I'm not sure, Estelle, to be honest. That hasn't been brought up to my knowledge. So it wasn't raised as a concern in the discussion that we had.
Thank you. I think Dave's got an answer to that.
No, I don't have. Oh, but what I will do is just follow it up. Okay. So I will check. I'm not aware that there's any pending kind of cessation of funding in that space. The conversation is continuing. It might be that we're transitioning from one to another and we just need to catch up in our reporting.
Yeah, and it might be. So the Integrated Care Fund was initially the fund that supported the work of the regional partnership boards, and that was replaced with the Regional Integration Fund 18 months. I'm going to say a year to 18 months ago, but it might just seem that long. And this might be a separate pot that's housed in Welsh Government, separate to that. So it's just trying to, just for clarity, really, because it would be a shame if we didn't have ongoing funding.
Did you want to comment on anything else there?
I just wanted to flag, so apologies, Chair, but I just did want to make sure we picked up on item 6 as well. As board will have previously approved the appendix B process, and through request for the process, and a revision to that will apply that for joint investigations. I just think that probably is also worth picking up in colleagues' interest.
Okay. Okay. Any other points to Rebecca? No. Good. In that case, move on to finally on the section 2. Back indeed to Kevin for the financial performance committee.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's a lot of this we've already covered, and indeed Bethan has covered some of it. And it's interesting to see how the overlap of committees looking at similar data for different reasons is quite a helpful sort of way of triangulating, I think. We know about the performance challenges against the risk we have. You know, losing 30. Best part of a third of capacity for any given shift is a significant impact against our ability to perform. Performance below 50% at 48% there in October. You know, really challenging. You know, even though it is slightly better than the reasonable worst case scenario that was predicted, it's not the direction of travel we want to be going in. And we know that. We talked about the ED department work and the summit that you're going to next week. So that's you know, that's kind of a hopeful development. Echo Bethan's point about Lee's newly formatted report. It's actually quite a lot of information, but the way it's structured is really helpful. You know, COVID-19 prevalence, seasonal flu, and all the other bugs that are out there could have a significant impact on our performance as well going forward. Chris and Rachel and Lee may well want to pick up on some of these specific points, but they have been gone through in detail, as I say, at the committee stage. Financial position is as described. You know, it's challenging. But as I said earlier, Chris and the team are all over it and are prepared to exploit opportunities if and when they arise, and you know, kind of looking into Q4 and how that might develop in terms of opportunity. Then IMTP, as stated there, definitely you know, fully engaged in the 6 goals, value-based healthcare agenda. And that work, some good feedback from the CEO's road shows And then the risks are as they are. You know, you can see the ones that have been talked through in detail and have either been downgraded or you know, rated slightly differently, and the rationales are there. And then, you know, the two risks at the bottom there, the 1538, I guess we're going to not I guess we are going to take in closed session later, and then 542 is around decarbonisation, and clearly that's a challenge given the circumstances that we all find ourselves in at the moment. So I'll stop there, Chair. If any of my exec colleagues want to pick up on anything specific, or anyone wants to, you know, ask any questions, please do.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Well, they're looking at me and I'm thinking, is he about to raise his hand, or isn't he? It's like an old. No, he's not. Any other questions to Kevin on that? No. Good. All right. Thank you very much. We don't have a People and Culture meeting report because they haven't had their meeting yet. That's happening about a week's time, I think. So thank you very much for all of those reports. So we move on to the final part of the meeting agenda. These are the consent items. First of which is just a notification that the seal has been used, item 16. The seal has been used in a couple of occasions on contract matters, and we're required to note that, which we do. We then have the minutes of various board committees which have all been attended to the bundle, and I think we're just there to note that we've seen all those, and also minutes from a couple of the other organisations within the sort of wider health firmament, the Eve Committee and a couple of others. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Trish, if that's the case. So we're going to say a few words about Kevin, I think. So before we actually formally close, I just want to make the point that it is very careless of the newly appointed chair, that's me, to within a couple of months lose the vice chair. I don't think the two things are connected. I hope they're not connected. Kevin, it would be remiss of us not to record the fact that this is your last board meeting, so we're going to do that. Clearly, you know, I've only had the pleasure of working with you for a matter of weeks, so I'm going to defer to Jason on this occasion to speak to the issue of your leaving us.
Thanks, Chairman. Kevin, we have got some gifts for you, but we'll talk separately to today about how we managed to pass those across to you as you weren't able to join us in person today. So for those colleagues that have been on the board for a while, or actually let's turn it the other way, for those colleagues that have joined the board more recently, Kevin was first appointed to the board at WAST in 2014, Kevin, weren't you? So you've done a full term of 8 years, or 2 terms of two 4-year terms, and became our vice chair in 2019, and as we've heard through the reports that we've seen today, you've also now chair, or have recently been chairing the Academic Partnership Committee and Finance and Performance Committee, which we're grateful for. You are active, of course, in the system across Wales, being a trustee at St John Wales, and of course we have a strategic partnership with St John Ambulance in Wales, both providing our full service, but also support EMS operations, and of course we work closely with St John and volunteers, particularly from St John at planned events across Wales, pretty much every week. You were initially trained, Kevin, as a nurse, didn't you, in the late 70s, and subsequently worked in A&E. You worked in A&E at Whipps Cross in East London, where I worked as well, not in A&E, but on the road with a London ambulance service. I don't think we were ever at Whipps Cross at the same time, but I certainly have fond memories of the place and what it was like in the late 90s. You've been in the TA since 83, and have been active in a range of roles, deployments there, and also part of the, and also worked or have worked as part of as a medical advisor for the Halo Trust in various overseas locations as well. You're a patron of the Young People's Charity, around motivation and the Learning Trust, and an ambassador more locally for the cancer charity around prostate cancer. I could go on, Kevin. There's many more things I could go on and say, but I suppose for us as a board, me and the executive team in the organisation, this is our formal opportunity to thank you for your contribution, stewardship, counsel, and support over the last 8 years. For me, you know, having been with the organisation just over 4 years now, I do think we are in a very different place to where we were 4 years ago. As similar as I said to Martin, when Martin left us, you know, a couple of months ago in September, the legacy he and you leave behind is palpable. Whilst we have substantial challenges that we touched on today, we've made significant progress in a range of areas, and that's with the support that you, Kevin, wider board have offered to the leadership team. So I'm personally grateful, and I know the executive team is too. And on behalf of the board, we thank you for your 8 years service. I'm sure we're still going to see you around in 1 or 2 roles in Wales in the years to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Would you like to respond to that address?
Just very quickly, Chair. I've said to colleagues before, the imposter syndrome in me, you know, it writ large, it isn't very comfortable in these sorts of situations. I mean, Jason touched on the change in this organisation. You know, when I joined this organisation 8 years ago, it was in a very challenging place for very different reasons that the challenges to the challenges we face today, and that structural change and the work that the executive put in to try and make this the best possible organisation that it can be is also palpable, and that takes leadership at all levels, and I recognise that. I am, you know, truly sorry I couldn't. I'm not with you. I fully planned to drive to North Wales yesterday, but you get to a certain age and they offer you the pneumonia vaccination. You take it, not realising that it's going to knock you flat for 48 hours. So apologies for that. I am coming to Pontprenna now for the opening of the station on the 1st of December. So hopefully I'll catch up with some of you there. I think you were born in Whips Cross when I was working there, Jason.
I was born in Whips Cross, Kevin, in 74. So there you go. Yeah.
Okay, that was a little.
Why were you working?
A little bit before my time. And yeah, thanks for mentioning the other organisations that I'm quite passionate about. I hopefully I'll see as many of you as possible on the 1st of December. I'm not sure if our IMTP meeting later in December is going to take place, but that is the last meeting that's in my diary currently. So as I say, hopefully I'll see you on the 1st of December, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and on behalf of the board, we obviously wish you well. Okay, so we come to the last couple of items of any other business. I haven't been notified of anything, so I'm not assuming that anybody. Just for to say, good. Date of next meeting is in January, and like all good chairs, new chairs, I won't be. So what's the new vice chair? We hope we'll have a new vice chair by then, and what they don't know yet is they will be having the joy of chair. So please treat them gently. So now we just need to resolve as a board that we are going to invite the press, the public to lead the meeting because of the confidential nature of the work that we're going to be transacting pursuant to the appropriate legislation. Assume we will be able to do that. So on that note, we will close this meeting. Thank everybody for attending. I think the plan is that we'll take perhaps a quick 5-minute break. We will then reconvene in our closed session and we'll run through till 12 and we're going to have an early lunch and then we'll come back and finish. So that's our time. Okay. Thank you.